The Department of Public Works will again appear before Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts, Scopa, to answer questions on public monies spent. Scopa is questioning why almost R500,000 was spent on braai entertainment areas in 3 ministerial homes. Now, the department is also expected to provide information on the processes followed to procure the 3 ministerial houses that were bought at 4 million, 6 million and 9 million rand respectively. The department tasked with managing state assets, construction and procurement of space requirements seems to be the target for corruption. And last month, the ministry announced that the Special Investigating Unit, the SIU, which has been brought in with hopes of recovering over R1 billion lost in corruption, have now been roped to this. But Public Works Minister Thulas Nxesi is here with us this morning to help us unpack and understand more of it. Minister, thanks for coming through.
Morning, Sakin, and morning to the viewers.
So last Sunday, we opened the papers and it spoke about R500,000 being spent on braai areas. Yesterday, we told that your department, once again, this time guilty of paying over 100,000 rand to procure 1 rug. It must be soul-sapping for you as the minister, to have these revealed piecemeal like that every week.
Well, I must say Scopa was right to raise concerns, and this came from all the parliamentarians, the ruling party and the opposition. It cannot be that we're spending millions on what we call the prestige portfolio and during this particular climate. But I think that must be put in context. Remember that this goes back to 1910, where the government of the day then decided to split the government in between Cape Town and Pretoria. And you had to split the accommodation for the ministers and MPs. But now, in 2014, you remember that President Zuma expanded the cabinet. And that meant, or expanded the executive rather, and that meant we had to procure more houses for the executive members. However, you must accept that if you procure the ministerial houses, you have to look at the place where you're procuring in terms of accessibility, in terms of issues of security. The police put lots of requirements. If it doesn't have the walls, you have to put those walls. So there's a lot of prescriptions which are given by the police.
But does the department not already have homes in its portfolio?
No. The houses which we're having, most of the ministers are staying in, are the old houses. Sometimes we have taken a decision that it's better to procure a new house than to keep those old houses, which tend to be more expensive to maintain them. And we've even applied to the Heritage Council that we need to demolish those houses and build new houses, because, as I say, to have those houses there and maintain them, they've become very expensive. They are called heritage. Even some of the materials have to be ordered from outside the country. So that's the reason.
How many of those houses do you have on your books currently?
I don't have the figure right with me, but I think there has been a quotation of plus minus 160, but the officials who are dealing with those houses, they know about those houses. Most of the houses in what is known as the various government estates, totally old and very difficult to maintain. Almost every year, you have to maintain, you have to pop out about 50,000 and so on. It's really not economic to keep some of those houses.
Is there any guideline as to how much you should be spending on those procurement of those houses?
Well, unfortunately, there's no guideline. Like I'm saying, when we procured some houses last year, I remember at some stage, 5 houses, there were 4 in Cape Town and 1 in Pretoria. But the reality is, housing or houses are very expensive in Cape Town. If Pretoria is even bad. But what happens is that last year, for instance, we had to go into what we'd call shortened procedures. And these are approved by the Treasury. And we go to the Land Affairs Board. We also look into our structures. We also go to the Treasury. And remember, people would put the various bids and so on. And I think in terms of our budgeting, we had said it should not go more than 7 million. But unfortunately, most of the houses we got, they went up to about 9 million. We expected it in Cape Town because housing is very expensive in Cape Town. Unfortunately, there is no limit. This is a matter which I've said it needs to be addressed because it's part of what we call the ministerial handbook, where I said a recommendation I must give as a minister to the president and even to the cabinet to decide on the issue of the limits.
What is the status of the ministerial handbook as we speak? Have the amendments been made to the 2007 ministerial handbook? What is the status of that?
You'd remember that this is a matter which was raised during the time of President Zuma.
Yes.
And I think the current president is looking at the matter, and that's a matter for the president.
How long, though? Because at some point it seemed as though there was being headway made and, there were some determinations. So why hasn't there been movement and any finalization?
Without speaking for the president, I think the president who was taken over this year must be looking into that matter and wants to satisfy himself if the issues have been properly raised, and then we'll bring it back to the cabinet when it's necessary.
Last month at a press briefing, Minister, you indicated that you had called in the SIU once again to come in and, try and help you recover 1.2 billion rand that you believe was corruptly lost by the department. Now, why should we trust you on this, Minister? Because previously, and I think this was in around 2014, that sort of time, there was also, a time when you brought in the SIU again. But what has happened then? Has anybody been held accountable, or is this just for the public to say we're doing something, but we never really follow through?
SIU has done investigations, and they've given us results. We have acted on some of the people, taking them through the disciplinary actions, and some of them have been referred by the SIU to the Hawks and the NPA to go into court. And once they are there, they are out of our hands. But we have expelled people. We have given sanctions in some of the areas. So some of the investigations are continuing. It happens in the different areas, and I can tell you there are 4 areas which criminals are looking at. They are looking at the facilities management, they are looking at the big projects of government, they are looking at the leasing, and they are looking at the prestige portfolios. And those previously were related to the leasing. But now we've discovered something new. In the facilities management, when I came in, we've discovered that 16,000 transactions are very suspicious, and we've referred that matter through we've referred the matter to the SIU to look into it because it's very big for us. And clearly there's something. One of the issues we're looking at, we've referred the matter of the appointments of many posts, more than 600.
More than 600, I saw that, yeah.
Within 4 months. We have referred that to the DPSA and the PSC to check if that was done properly according to the prescripts of the department, because we're suspicious how some of those things are done.
Good on you, Minister, because those appointments do look suspicious. However, you have people in your department who are doing business with your department. How many of those have you dealt with?
These were highlighted to us by the AG, and we've written to those different people to see if they've declared. Initially, they did not declare, we want them. But this time around, we've been told by the various people who are dealing with these issues that people have declared, but we are still going through that particular. And obviously, one of the things we must accept is that sometimes there are no consequences, and there must be consequences. And I can tell you the reason why there are faceless and baseless allegations which are being put to the different bodies to say, let's investigate and so on. It's a response to the new investigations which we have put in place. Some of the elements are threatened by those investigations. They know that they are going to be exposed and they will have to account. So
we touched on the procurement of houses for ministers, the 100,000 rand rug.
You see, on that one, I heard it for the first time because I was told that there are whistleblowers. But remember, the minister doesn't have to know those details All the minister does is to deal with the policy. In fact, that's the problem in the public service. The minister only comes to know the wrong things after they have happened. Because if you come during the procurement stages, it's like you are trying to influence the procurement. We will have to look into those things and investigate those things and deal with the people if there's something wrong. But remember, even here, there used to be companies which were used to procure furniture. But I think some of the officials decided to be constructive and say, let's be economical. Let's have one contract for one company, maybe for a period of 3 years, and have regulated prices. And then there were people who didn't want to cooperate with that because year in, year out, they were using the same companies. 3 companies only were getting the tender. And there was some resistance when there was this particular new arrangement. We won't be shocked that this is raised in a context of this, but we will have to go and look into that. But some of the issues which are said to be coming from the whistleblowers tend to be lies, just in order to raise some tensions and to draw away attention from the real issues. But we will have to look into that particular matter.
I guess, just in closing, Minister, what the public wants is an assurance from your side as the Minister, as the person who has oversight over this portfolio, that you are indeed serious about tackling the corruption, because your department, I guess more so than any other, is really open to corrupt practices, as you've yourself alluded. But, how do you then assure the public right here and now that you will be looking into this and that the requisite steps will be taken to make sure that people are published and that they are held accountable? Because we saw now with the Nkandla, the officials who was to be held accountable for what went wrong in Nkandla, they've all basically walked scot-free.
And I must indicate that when we took over, or when I took over from Public Works, I went to Treasury, and the technical assistant unit helped me there to do a diagnostic of what was wrong and what was happening. We had to change the whole structure, and we had to look at the skills which are needed. And we were very clear that in terms of going forward, there are 2 pillars we have to look at: zero tolerance of fraud and corruption, and deal with those people who are dealing with that. We even put a new unit called risk unit and governance unit, which is having investigators internally. We're using internal investigators, but when the matters are too big, we refer them to SIU. But we also said we have to improve the way we do business. We need the right skills, and we have to ring fence the money, because that is a big property portfolio, which is 10 times bigger than the Growth Point. Therefore, it needs the right skilled people in property, in construction, and so on. That's what we are also trying to recruit now, and we're dealing with all those matters.
Well, Minister, there's so much we could still talk about, but unfortunately, time not on our side, so we're going to have to leave it there. Minister of Public Works, Thulas Nxesi, and of course, they will be appearing before Parliament's Scopa in order to explain some of the things. One of the things I didn't even touch on was the 375 million rand contract for the maintenance of the parliamentary precinct. It's a lot of money, and it seems as though that's all we talk about at Public Works. Lots of money and spent questionably. So we're going to keep our eyes and ears on the ground on this one. But let's take a break.